We continue now at the top of Daf Pei Aleph Amid Beis in Maseches Baba Basra. This is Baba Basra, Daf 81b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara said that if a person has fruits in Eretz Yisrael, but let's say he doesn't own the land, so he brings the Bikurim, but he doesn't read from the Parsha of the Bikurim. And the Gemara now says, Rav Shimon ben Al-Yakum, he asks Rabbi Elazar the following question: My time with Rabbi Meir be'ilan echad, my time with Rabbanan b'shnei ilanos. What's the reason of Rabbi Meir that if the person only buys one tree, so again in that case he doesn't own the land? And what's the reason of the Rabbanan in a case where a person buys two trees? According to the Rabbanan, there also the person owns the trees and not the land. So what is the reason that the person brings the Bikurim but does not read from the Parsha? And the Rashbam explains, My time with Rabbi Meir be'ilan echad kevon de'eno kore, since he doesn't read from the Parsha, mishum because it says you have to bring it from your land, and over here he doesn't own the land, he just buys the tree. So lama maybe, but if that's the case, why is he bringing bikurim at all? He shouldn't have to bring either. That should also be excluded from the pasuk because he doesn't own the land. Why is it that he's bringing the bikurim and not reading from the parsha? And the Gemara continues, Amar lo, he said back to him, Davar shaharishonim lo amru botam. This is something which the original people, meaning the original Tanoim, they didn't give the reason. Tishaleini b'beis hamedrash, are you asking me this question in the Beis HaMedrash? You're asking me this question in public, kedei levaisheni, in order to embarrass me. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba says, my kosher, what's the difficulty? We can answer this. Dilma Rabbi Meir be'ilan echad. Maybe Rabbi Meir, when it comes to buying one tree, svuke mesafkale, he's actually in doubt whether or not the person owns the land, and that's why the person is bringing the bikurim and not reading from the parsha. V'Rabbanan b'shnei ilanos svuke mesafkale. When we can say the same thing for the Rabbanan, when the person buys two trees, according to the Rabbanan, they have a doubt whether the person owns the land or not. And again, that would explain this halacha. And the Rashbam explains, Mesaf Galuhu, they have a doubt, Ikona Karka min Hadin Olo. There's a doubt whether or not the person does acquire the land according to the strict halacha or not. V'hai de Amri lo Kana Karka, and when we say that the halacha is, when they say the halacha is he doesn't get land, Hainu Mishum Diyad HaMocher Al Elyon, and that's just because we have a situation of doubt, and so the seller wins, the seller ends up with the upper hand, because if we have a doubt, we're not going to take it away from the seller, and so therefore, again, since it's a situation of doubt, that's why the Bikurim is brought, even though the parsha is not read. But the Gemara continues, but is it really a doubt? But the words that Rabbi Meir used were, Rabbi Meir says the reason why over here that you bring the Bikurim but you don't read from the parsha is because you did not acquire the land. It doesn't sound like there's a doubt. It sounds like certainly the person did not acquire the land. And the Gemara says, Ema, the way that it should be said is as follows, Shema lo kana karka. What Rabbi Meir actually said was maybe he didn't acquire the land, and again, this is a situation of doubt. But the Gemara continues, V'leichosh dedil malav bikurim ninhu. We should be concerned if it's a situation of doubt, maybe this really is not bikurim. V'kama'ayil chulin lazar, and then the person is essentially bringing something that's unconsecrated, that is chulin to the azara, which itself would be a violation. And the Rashbam explains, dil malav bikurim ninhu, maybe they're not bikurim, t'shema lo kana karka, because maybe the person did not acquire any land. V'kama'ayil chulin lazar, and he's bringing chulin to the azara, v'darshinim b'sifri ki yirchak mimcha hamakom v'zavachta, b'richok makom if you have something that's unconsecrated, let's say you have an animal that's chulin, you're not allowed to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. You can't bring chulin to the Azara. V'hu adin, and says the Rashbam, that's true. L'chol havas chulin ba'azara. Anything you bring that's chulin ba'azara to the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, sha'asr, that's forbidden. And the Rashbam says another explanation, inami, or you can say it's not a doraisa but midrabanan. To bring bikurim that are unconsecrated, that are not really bikurim to the Azara would be an isra midrabanan. It would be a violation on a Darabanan level. Dilma ika de chazile, because maybe someone will see this. The noig behen minig chulin kedinon v'savar kachim hein, that he's treating them like chulin, but the person thinks it's kachim. Hoel vaisinu b'azar, since he did bring it to the azara. V'yasel lizulzule bekachim, and that will cause people to treat kachim in an improper manner. And Tosas explains slightly differently. V'dil malav bikurim ninu v'kamayil chulin la'azara. Maybe it's not really bikurim, and it's a problem of chulin la'azara. B'chol makam sheyesh ke'in hakrava kihach. Anytime it looks like you're bringing it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's where there's a problem of chulin la'azara, like over here, sheyesh hagasha tnufa, where you're bringing it close, or you're waving it. And the Tosas continue, avol davar she'ein osin bo hakrava klal, but let's say it's something which you didn't do any hakrava whatsoever, bahu ein shayach isra hachnasas chulin ba'azara. There wouldn't be a problem of bringing chulin ba'azara, dilav kain, because if you didn't say that, lo yilbash kohen big dechol v'yikanis ba'azara, Kohen would not be able to wear regular clothing and enter the azara, v'gam Yisrael lo yikanis ba'azara, Yisrael also also wouldn't be able to enter the Azara. So therefore, Tosas say you can't take it that far. It's only in situations where you're doing some kind of hakrava that this is a problem. And the Gemara continues and answers the Makdash Lahu that the case over here is he brings these fruits to the Beis HaMikdash and he says if it's Bikurim then fine, but if not then I'm making it Hekdesh. As the Rashbam explains, the Makdash Lahu al Atanai, he makes it Hekdesh on a condition. You have a Bikurim Shaper. If it's Bikurim then good. Vila, but if not Likdashu then it should be Kadosh. We're talking here about a Kedushas Domim, Liknos Behen Karban, then the Beis HaMikdash will essentially own the fruits. They'll be able to sell it and use the money to purchase a carbon. In this way, you avoid the problem of bringing Chulin La'azara. But the Gemara continues, but the halach is when it comes to Bikurim, it needs to be eaten. So how are you going to eat it over here if you make it hektish? The Rashbam says, the Kohen needs to eat it. So maybe it is really actually has Kedushas Damim. And then he's deriving benefit from something that's hektish, and that's going to be a problem of Me'ilah. So if it is possibly Bikurim, it needs to be eaten. How are you going to eat it if it might also be hektish? And the Gemara answers to that, the Paraklu, that what he does is, he redeems them. The Rashbam says, Umashani de Paraklu achar shehinichim lefnei HaMizbeach v'heinif. After it's placed in front of the Mizbeach and you do the waving, so then he'll redeem it, it'll no longer be hektish, and it will be able to be eaten by the Kohen. But the Gemara continues, V'dilma lava bikurim ninu, but maybe it's not really bikurim. V'kam mifkaluhu mitruma meiser, but by treating it as bikurim, now you're exempting it from truma and meiser. You have a problem over here that you didn't separate trumas and meisers properly from this because you thought maybe it is bikurim and it doesn't need to have trumas and meiser separated. And the Rashbam explains, V'kam mafkalu mitruma v'nimtza ochel tevolim. It's going to come out he's eating tevel. Aval bikurim harein ketruma. Now if it's bikurim, it's like truma. Techsiv trumas yadcha elu ha-bikurim v'chol sadeyu yachol asus Bikurim, a person can make his whole field into Bikurim. It says in the pasuk that Bikurim are called Trumas Yadecha. Kedetanan v'mesechas Bikurim v'meshani the mafresh. So the Gemara is about to answer that he actually does separate Trumas and Meisers. And the Gemara continues the mafresh. So the cases that he does, he takes from this Bikurim and he separates Truma and Meiser in case it really is not Bikurim. And the Gemara continues B'shlama Truma Gedola. Now I understand if he separated from this Bikurim a little bit, let's say the Truma part, the Truma Gedola, so Yoav Lo Kohen, that also gets given to the Kohen. So it's not a problem. You give Bikurim to the Kohen, and the Kohen can eat Bikurim, and you give Truma to the Kohen. The Kohen eats Truma as well, so that's not a problem. And Meiser Sheni Nami Yoav Lo Kohen. Meiser Sheni as well, you could just give it to the Kohen. He's in Yerushalayim anyway, so it's not a problem. And Meiser Ani Nami, also Meiser Ani, Yoav Le Kohen Ani, he can just give it to a Kohen who's poor, and again, if it's Meiser Ani, then the Kohen who's poor can have it, and if it's Bikurim, then again, the Kohen who's poor can have that as well. Ela Meiser Rishon, but in terms of separating the Meiser Rishon, the Levi, who that goes to the Levi, how is he giving that to the Kohen? The Kohen is then taking it as Bikurim, but it really might be Meiser Rishon. You have a problem over here. Laman Yoevle, who are you going to give it to? How do you avoid that issue? And the Gemara answers, the Yoevle LeKohen Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. He could give it to a Kohen, even Meiser Rishon can go to a Kohen, according to Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. The Tanyas we learned in a Brisa, Truma Gedola LeKohen, Truma goes to the Kohen, Meiser Rishon LeLevi, Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi, Divrei Rabbi Akiva, that's the opinion, those are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah says, Meiser Rishon af LeKohen, Meiser Rishon also goes to a Kohen, and so therefore, according to Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, this is not a problem. And the Rashbam explains, Meiser Rishon LeKohen, Meiser Rishon goes to the Kohen, again, according to Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, V'lo LeLevi, it actually goes to the Kohen and not to the Levi, according to Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, Kedem Mefarish Bechsubas, this is explaining Ksubas, Beperiko Isha Shen Esar Malo, Muki Lo LeBasar de Konsinu Ezra. The case over there, the Gemara explains, is it's after Ezra imposed a fine on the Levium, and he said it's only going to go to the Kohanim. Umashmalei Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, Levium Dekra Af Kohanim Emashvan. At Doraisa level, Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah understands that when we say Meiser Rishon goes to the Levium, that includes Kohanim as well. To be Esrim v'Arba Mekomos Nikru Kohanim Levium, there are 24 places where the Kohanim are referred to as Levium. So on a Doraisa level, it can even go to the Kohen. And then Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah said, because of the fine that Ezra imposed, it actually only goes to Kohanim. But the Gemara continues, V'dilma bikurim ninu, maybe these fruits really are bikurim, ubo kriya, and then there really is a requirement to read from the parsha, and here we're not reading from the parsha because it's a suffix. And the Gemara answers to that, kriya lo ma'akevis, the reading from the parsha is not ma'akev, one still fulfills the mitzvah without reading from the parsha. And the Rashbam explains, uboy kriya v'heich yochel mehem below kriya, how could you eat from these bikurim without reading from the parsha? And the Gemara answered, lo ma'akevis, it's not ma'akev, kidamin perak basra, the meseches makos, like we say in the last parak of Maseches Makos. But the Gemara continues, V'lo, but is that really true? Is the Kriya not Ma'akev? V'omer Rabbi Zera, but didn't Rabbi Zera say, Kol haroi labila, any carbon mincha which can be mixed, ein bila ma'akeves bo. So mixing it is not Ma'akev. You don't have to actually mix it. It just has to be able to be mixed. V'she'eno roi labila, but if it's not able to be mixed, bila ma'akeves bo, so that fact that it's not able to be mixed is actually Ma'akev. And so over here as well, the fact that you cannot read from the Parsha, that should be Ma'akev. And the Rashbam explains, quoting from the Gemara Menachos, Umeshani Amar Rabbi Zera over there Menachos, he answers, he explains, Kol haroi labila kagon shishim isaron im lo bal al kosher. As long as it could be mixed, it's an amount that could be mixed. So even if you don't mix it, it's kosher. Aval shishim v'echad, but 61 she'ein roi labila, which already is not able to be mixed. So bila ma'akeves bo. So then already the fact that you can't mix it, that is ma'akev. Kolomar, meaning to say, Mashi'i efshar lehivola, because of the fact that it cannot be mixed, ma'akeves bo, that's going to be ma'akev, it's not going to be kosher. To kaven dechsiv v'yotzak ola Hashem and v'tziva livlo, since the pasuk says you're going to put oil on the carbon mincha, and the pasuk says that you have to mix. Dechsiv belula, it says in the pasuk belula, shma amina shetziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahavi mincha sheyachol l'kayim b'hen mitzvahs belila. You see from the pasuk that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is commanding that you have to bring a carbon mincha where it's possible to be makayim this mitzvah of mixing it. And the Rashbam continues, v'gabe bikurim nami, the same thing is true by bikurim. Dechazu l'kriya b'yinan, you have to at least be able to read the parsha in theory. V'yafagav de'ika meviyah bikurim shemeviyim v'lo koran. Now, even though there are some who bring bikurim, that they bring the bikurim and don't read, but Maseches Bikurim, we find that in Maseches Bikurim, Hani Mili Kagon Ger, that's for example, let's say you have a convert, to Meikara Ki Maisi Al Menashalo Likros Maisi. The convert already from the beginning is bringing on the condition not to read. Maisilu, that's how he's bringing it. He's not able to read from the Parsha because he didn't receive the land at the time of the receiving of the land of Eretz Yisrael. Ukagon Mehachag V'Yad Chanukah, also let's say you do it after Sukkot, you bring the Bikurim from Sukkot until Chanukah. To Mevi Veino Kori, there also you bring without reading Kedanafkalan Mikrai B'Sifri. We learned that out in the Sifri. Aval Hanach Bikurim D'Maisilu, but these Bikurim, where you're bringing them Misveika, and you have here a doubt, Shema Tu'un and Kriya Minatorah, that maybe there is an obligation to read Minatorah, the Shema Kanakarka, because maybe he does own land, V'Hilka Chazul Kriya B'Yinan, so it has to be that you're able to read. In this case, you can't read. That should be problematic. And the Gemara continues and answers that you can avoid this problem of not reading from the Parsha, Da'avid L'Huk Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, because he can do like Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. The Yomar, because Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, Botzran V'Shogran B'Yad Shliach, let's say he gathers the fruits and sends them with an agent, with a Shliach, Umeis Shliach B'Derech, and then the Shliach dies on the road, Mevi Ve'eno Kori, so then he brings, but he doesn't read from the Parsha. My time, what's the reason? D'chsiv, because it's written in the Pasuk, V'Lakachta V'Heveis, it says you're going to take it, and you're going to bring it. And the Rashbam explains, Botzran V'Shigran B'Yad Shliach, again he sends it with an agent, of Shemeis Shliach B'Derech, Sheshliach Atzmo Botzran V'Meis B'Chatzi Aderech, maybe the Shliach gathered it, and he died halfway through the journey, Umino Shliach Acher Tachtav, and then there's a new Shliach that takes over, Adli Yerushalayim until Yerushalayim, O Shehiviu Habaylam Atzman Misham Ve'elach, or maybe the actual owners take over once the Shliach dies. So maybe Ve'eno Kori, he brings, but he doesn't read. Ein Habaylam Korin, the meaning the owners don't read from the Parsha, Kedim Mefarish Taima, as the Gemara will explain the reason. It says in the Pasuk, V'Lakachta V'Heveis, it says you're going to take the Bikurim and you'll bring them. D'chsiv V'Lakachta Me'reishis Kol Priho Adom Asher Tavi, it says again you're going to take. V'Hai V'Lakachta Kro Yeseruhu, that V'Lakachta is an extra part of the Pasuk. D'Motzi L'Michta V'Heveis Me'artzecha, could have just said you're going to bring it from your land. V'Darshinan Beis, so we darshan from the extra part of the Pasuk, Misha Lokayach, the Hainu Botzer, the one who's taking, the one who's gathering, who maybe, he's also the one who has to bring it. D'Ba'inan Habetzira V'Hava Kula Adli Yerushalayim Ba'adam Echad, it has to be the same person who's gathering and bringing it to Yerushalayim. Hilka Chaycha D'Batzran Iyu V'Hashliach Hevi, and therefore let's say he gathered it, and the Shliach brought it, Lo Hava Lakicha V'Hava Be'echad, there it's not being done with one person, the taking and the bringing is not all being done with the same person. Ela B'Shnayim, it's only being done with two people. V'chein Heichad D'Meis B'Derech, also if he dies on the road, the same thing. Lo Hava Lakicha Gmar Hava B'Yachad, the taking and the finishing of the bringing is not with one person. Aval Heichad D'Batzran Shliach V'Evian L'Yerushalayim, now if the Shliach would gather it and bring it to Yerushalayim, Oz Koren Habaylim, so then already the owners do read from the Parsha. The Shlucho Shel Adam Kemoso, because his agent is like him. V'Yachal Likros Hine Hevesi, he could say that I brought. Umiu Shliach Atzmo Lo Bar Kriyahu, but the Rashbam notes, the Shliach himself, he would never read, he's not able to read. Kedetanan b'Maseches Bikurim, like we learn in the Mishnah Maseches Bikurim, Shein Yachol Lomar Asher Nasata Li Hashem, he can't say that phrase, that Hashem gave it to me. V'Hachanami here also, Batzran V'Shilchan Al Yedei Shliach, what he can just do is, in this particular case where we have a doubt, out, he can gather them and then send them with an agent. The pater lehu mikriya, that would exempt it from having an obligation of reading. And you can't ask in that situation, wouldn't he also be pater? He'd also be exempt from bringing it. Because in the land it was already sanctified. Like we learn in the Mishnah Maseches Bikurim, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph.